Lowering around outside signs of everyday life, green and red taxi bikes buzzed past them, their own horns blasting out angry little tunes, billboards carrying advertisements, or computers and mobile phones sprung up, blocking the view. And then they turned off and come back once again to the sea grey and uninviting breaking against sand that seems to have been mixed with cement forming a bench that was barely more attractive than a building site. How far is it to Fabian's house? Richard asked. The driver looked up nervously, meeting Richard's eye in the mirror. We don't go to the house, he said. Why not? We go to the hotel. Europe in Marifolis is not far, Mr. Fabian. Meet you there. Richard gazed at Matt. He was puzzled by the chance of plan. Nobody had said anything about a hotel. They stopped at traffic lights where the noise was worse than ever. All around them, drivers were leaning on their horns, furious at beginning, kept waiting. There was the church of buckled metal, a van colliding with the back of a car, the shrill scream of a whistle as a policeman in a dark green uniform tried to take control of the jungle of a glitter to a blaster on the back of a motorbike. A figure stepped in front of the car. It was a boy about his own age, dressed in filthy jeans and a t-shirt juggling with three balls. He seemed to have he seemed to be enjoying himself, sending the ball spinning in a circle over his head. He preferred a cut and beginning for money. Albert shook his head, and at once the ball was transformed, his face controlled with anger. He swore briefly and spat at the window. The lights changed and they moved off again. Matt was relieved. He had never been anywhere like this before. What had he got himself into? Now they were driving down a quarter more resident street, moving far away from the sea. Matt had the feeling they were getting close to the hotel. What time is it? He asked Richard. I don't know. Richard turned his wrist to look at his watch. Matt realized that he had just nodded off. Both of them were half asleep, half awake, caught somewhere between the two. My watch is still on English time, but right now it's he never finished the sentence. The car stopped, erupted. Both Matt and Richard gutturally. Matt saw what had happened. A blue van had driven at speed out of a side street, blocking the way ahead. At first he thought it was just an accident, but then he saw the doors of the van open. Four men piled out and began to run towards them, and at the moment he knew there was nothing accidental about it. They had driven into some sort of trap. Those people had been waiting for them. Albert snowed it too with a sense of unreality. Matt saw him reach into the glove compartment and bring out a gun. Faber must have been afraid of it in the city. Maybe that's why he had changed their destination, and and why else would he have ensured that his driver was armed? He wasn't the only one. Two of the men coming at them from the van were carrying handguns. Everything was happening so quickly that Matt only glimpsed their faces, dark and dement, with long black hair. They were wearing jeans and open-necked skirts, the sleeves rolled up, and rolled up. Then somebody fired a shot, and the front windscreen became frosted maze or cracked with a single hole, a deadly eye at the centre. Albert cried out. He had been hit in the shoulder. His blood splattered against the back of his seat, but now he brought his own gun around and fired 3 times. The front window collapsed, the glass cascading onto the bonnet. The man from the van hesitated, then took over, and that was when Richard acted, grabbing hold of Matt with one hand. He threw open the door with the other. He was in the right-hand side of the car, on the side furthest from the van. "Move," he shouted. "No, sensor." Albert twisted around in the front. Richard ignored him, dragging Matt with him. He said out. He slid out of the car and into the street. Matt didn't restrict. His hand was spinning. He didn't know what was happening, but he agreed. With Richard, he would feel safe in the open air. Two more shots. The corner of his eye. Matt saw Albert have himself clumsily out of the car and run off into the evening gloom. On one hand, clutching his wounded shoulder, he was abandoning them. They were in the street with houses on either side, but nobody had come out to see what was happening. Nobody wanted to help. "Run," Richard shouted. "Just keep moving. Don't stop for anything." Matt didn't need telling twice. He stumbled away from the car and began to run back up the street, heading in the direction from which they'd come. It was dark now. Street lamps threw an ugly artificial light over them, turning everything yellow, and it had become even hotter. Matt could feel the sweat trickling underneath his clothes. The men were coming after them. Who were they? Who had sent them? Matt didn't dare look around, but he could hear the trainers hitting the tarmac. None, they were getting closer. Richard cried out. Matt stopped and turned. 2 other men had grabbed hold of the journalist. Matt saw one of them quite clearly, a round, almost feminine face, unshaven, a small scar next to one eye. He was holding Richard around the neck. The two of the men were coming up fast behind Richard. Was struggling, and somehow, for just a brief moment, he managed to break free. Keep going, Matt, he shouted. "Move." He lashed out with a foot, kicking one of the men in the stomach. The man groaned and collapsed, but the second man, the one with the scar, had grabbed Richard again. Matt watched as the others reached them, making it 3 against 1. There was no way to save Richard. Matt twisted around and began to run. He had one of the attackers calling out to him, and although he couldn't be certain, he thought he had them using his real name, so they know who he was. The trap must have been set up long before they arrived. Matt turned a corner and sprinted down an alleyway at the end. He turned again, come to a main road, and crossed it, weaving recklessly between the traffic. Someone yelled at him. A bus shot past, punching at him with a fist of warm air. He come to a patch of wasteland and ran across it. A dog dirty and half starved, baked at him, backed at him. A few local women, watched with their custody at least, stopped his breath, rasping into his throat. He was covered in sweat. His shirt seemed to have glued itself to him, and he was really with jet lag. He could feel it sitting on his shoulders, trying to hammer him into the ground. But at least he was alone. He looked back across the wasteland at the main road and the traffic in the distance. Nobody was coming after him. He had escaped. It was only that the anomaly of his situation struck him. He was in a strange country with no money and no luggage. The driver who had been sent to collect him had the truth of saving his own skin, and his only friend had been kidnapped by an unknown entity. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know how to get to where he was supposed to be. It was night, and he was on his own. Subscribe, hit the bell, share, like, thank you, click on my screen thumbnail. Watch my videos from start to finish. Subscribe, hit the bell, share, like, thank you.